everything that we can moving into spring training. By the way, spring training pitchers and catchers report on Wednesday, so a lot to get through. So let's start off. Let's just go ahead and talk about starting pitching because, frankly, the starting pitching got practically all of the attention early on for the Braves. A lot of guys were talking about Trevor Bauer possibly coming to the Braves. There's a lot of hype around what the Braves could do with starting pitching. To me, I think the Braves made the right moves. I think they certainly could have gotten Trevor Bauer, but with that salary, the Braves are free to do a lot more. So with starting pitching, the Braves, again, have made most of their adjustments in starting pitching. Rightfully so. We saw it last year when Soroka went down. Everybody was fearful of what the Braves are going to be after that. Charlie Morton is a guy that I think could be very good for the Braves. One, he's a veteran. I think that is very important on a young staff. He's had great success in Tampa and even Houston. I know we don't like to count that, but he did have success there too. And I don't need Charlie Morton to be an ace. I don't need him to be our number one. I need him to be a solid pitcher. If he's a solid starting pitcher that can give me 6 innings every game, I'm happy. And keep it, within reach, I'm more than happy. I think he can be a solid starter. And more than that, I think he will be more than that. There's no reason to think he won't be all-star level. He has been in the past few years. We got a lot to talk about today, guys. I promise I'm going to get to that Kipnis news. But I think Charlie Morton is going to be the veteran on the staff, and I wouldn't underestimate him. A lot of people are kind of just pushing it to the wayside. When the Ozuna thing was happening, a lot of people were saying, well, the Braves haven't done anything. No, they went and got Charlie Morton, and they went and got another guy. His name's Drew Smyly. If you hadn't heard of Drew Smyly, go check him out. He's worth taking a look at. I want to see in spring training with Drew Smyly, what I want to see out of him is what the Braves are looking for. Anthopoulos said he expects Drew Smyly's best years are in his next few. I want to see that this season, and that all starts at spring training, obviously. So I expect to see kind of the usual out of Max Fried. I don't think there's any reason to not expect some result better than last year. He had a very good year last year. At one point, he was 7-0, I think. Obviously, he carried the Braves through that 60-game season without Mike Soroka until Ian Anderson got there and began helping out with the taking over some of those innings. But I don't want to gloss those two guys over. Max Fried and Ian Anderson, obviously we just assume they're going to be good, but they're the ones I'm least worried about. I think that's fair to say. Ian Anderson showed an unbelievable amount of skill last year on a rookie season, and there's no reason to think he won't be that good or even better this year. However, I think he'll probably have some bumps. Every pitcher does, especially being that young. But, I expect to see him develop this year and become what we've seen Mike Soroka become and what we've seen Max Fried become in the past few years. I think there's no reason to not expect that out of Ian Anderson. Mike Soroka is the other guy we got to talk about in the starting rotation. With Mike Soroka in spring training, I'm not expecting him to have just an outstanding spring training. What I want to know out of Mike Soroka is a timetable. I want to know when he's going to be ready. Is it going to be 3 weeks into the season? Is it going to be a month into the season? Or is it going to be the All-Star break? Because those are three very different things. As a rookie, Mike Soroka kind of blew the world up. Somebody even made a song about him. He was very good, and he was very good before he got hurt. He was, frankly, Max Fried sort of took up the mantle, but he was better than Max Fried at that time. So I want to see him come back. And again, I hope to see him have a full recovery. There's no reason to expect that he wouldn't, but hopefully that will be the case here pretty soon. In terms of the entire staff, there are 3 Cy Young candidates, genuinely, that I believe on the Braves staff right now. Max Fried, Mike Soroka, and I would throw Ian Anderson in there in terms of Cy Young candidates moving forward this year, next year, and the year after that. I don't think there's any reason to not think those guys have that potential. Based on what we saw last year, Ian Anderson has a very high ceiling that I don't think he's quite reached yet. And I think we're going to see that this year, and I hope to see some results of that in spring training. But I think this is a well-built staff. Hopefully it'll keep intact going forward, not like last year. Hopefully it will be able to stay healthy, stay as talented as we know they are, and perform like they did last year. So I think what the Braves did last year with the little starting pitching they had was very impressive. I can't wait to see what they do with the staff of, frankly, Mike Soroka, Max Fried, Drew Smyly, Charlie Morton, and Drew Smyly. I think they're going to be very, very good with that crew. So let's talk about the bullpen going into spring training. At the moment, there's a few open spots in the pen, right now. We're losing we already lost Melanson, that's for a fact. We haven't re-signed Shane Green, so that's yet to be seen. But there's a rose gallery of guys within the minors that we already have that can fill that role. Right now in the bullpen, there's obviously A.J. Minter, Chris Martin, Josh Tomlin, Tyler Matzik, Will Smith, and probably Jacob Webb. I'm going to throw all those guys in there. A lot of familiar faces. But there's also a lot of familiar faces that don't necessarily have a role at the moment. I see you guys talking about him in the chat. One guy is Bryce Wilson. And, another guy that I would kind of put in the same hat as Bryce Wilson is Kyle Wright. Starting experience already, but they've shown that they're probably better in the bullpen role as of right now. I think they can adapt to that, and I'd like to see how they adapt to that in spring training and if they can be successful in relief because, I think those are guys that could be starters, but I think they're, at the moment, with our starting pitching depth that we have at the moment, they might start the season as a starter if Mike Soroka is not ready, one or the other, either being Kyle Wright, Bryce Wilson. If not, if Mike Soroka is ready to go, I think you see those guys move to the bullpen. And if the Braves don't re-sign Shane Green, that might be the move they make. But we're going to have to wait and see on that. But I also think you got to see Huascar Ynoa, you got to see Patrick Weigel, Tucker Davidson, Philip Pfeiffer, Kyle Muller. At some point, any of those guys could get called up to the big leagues. You got to see them in spring training. You got to at least see a showcase. And, frankly, they're the depth that the Braves have. The other guy, Luke Jackson, is making $2 million this year. I need to see some development in him early on so that I can trust him in relief. No knock on him, but when you're making that kind of money, you're in all the headlines in the offseason of, asking why, and fairly asking why. Frankly, a lot of you guys were throwing his name around angrily on Twitter. And hopefully we'll see some things in the spring that give us all just a little bit more comfort with him coming out of the pen. He's a guy that puts us all on pins and needles. And hopefully we'll see a little bit more consistency and not so many base runners. That's the biggest thing. Sean Newcomb. This is kind of a guy that I'm pulling out the back here. Sean Newcomb is a guy that I think can still be effective. And I think he can be effective out of the pen. I really think he is a guy that can find himself quickly, make some quick adjustments, and get back to what he was. I want to see him, 1, get that opportunity, and 2, make the most out of it. And don't act like I'm crazy. I know there's been a lot of talk about Sean Newcomb in the same regard as, Mike Fultonevich, in terms of how you guys feel about it. But we've seen that kind of thing happen. A.J. Minter, 2 years ago, was far from what A.J. Minter was last season. So I think there are a lot of guys that deserve another shot, Sean Newcomb being one of them. Touki Toussaint, last year he had some ups and downs, but those ups at the time were really good. Definitely compared to what the Braves had at the time, i.e. Tommy Malone, Robbie Erlin. So you compare that to what Touki did, and he had one really good start. I remember watching it vividly. We were all rooting for him. I remember we were hoping maybe Touki can be what Mike Soroka was. I think there's real depth in pitching for the Braves. Some is unknown, but I truly think that we have some depth for years to come. Think about the names I just mentioned. Huascar Ynoa, Patrick Weigel, Tucker Davidson, Philip Pfeiffer, Kyle Muller. Those guys have yet to hit the majors. Okay, a lot of them. Huascar Ynoa we've seen, but we haven't really seen him take over a mantle. I thought he'd be a closer because he throws gas. But he's got to control his fastball a little bit. You guys love to talk about Tucker Davidson. Every video I posted in regards to Tucker Davidson was well viewed, and you guys really hit the mark on it. Kyle Muller's a guy that really has impressed me. I remember watching him face off against Ian Anderson actually in a pregame thing that the Braves aired, and it was very impressive. I think he's a guy that we could see very soon, and especially if Mike Soroka is not ready, it wouldn't surprise me if any of those guys got the call. Bryce Wilson included, Kyle Muller, Kyle Wright included, a lot of them. But what I really want to see, aside from pitching, we got to talk about the offense. So last year, the Braves shook the landscape of Major League Baseball in 2020 in terms of their offense. I want to see a repeat. I want to see an offensive aftershock. You brought back Ozuna, right? I have very little doubts of what Ozuna will be this year. There's no reason to doubt what he'll be. Could it be a repeat of last year? That's going to be very hard to do. He put up MVP level numbers, as did Freddie. It's going to be very hard to repeat it, but I think they can be almost as successful. and I think that that's going to be enough. And if they're as successful, they're a shredder. But I think our offense is one of the best in baseball. And think about the names on the lineup right now: Freddie Freeman, Marcell Ozuna, Ronald Acuna, Travis d'Arnaud. And then at the bottom, you got Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson, Austin Riley. I'll throw him in there. You got a lot of guys that have a lot of upside that's yet to really be reached. I really think I have no real reason to worry about the Braves offense. The guys I want to see in this order have a great spring. Number one has to be Austin Riley. And I have my reasons, but Austin Riley, I really think that we've seen moments. I think, that consistency is waiting to be unlocked, and I think we're hopefully going to see it this year. I think this year is going to be a cornerstone for what his career is going to be. Number two is Christian Pache. After his Major League debut and his postseason debut, frankly, he's easily one of the most anticipated guys technically in the minors at the start of this season for the Braves. His development in the spring is key to his success this year, I believe. I really think that whether he be starting for the Braves on opening day or a month into the season, I think we're going to see some greatness out of him in spring training. Obviously, he's going to get that spring training invite. I think he's going to prove himself there. He's going to prove to be the center fielder for the Braves. He's got a lot of upside to him, a lot to be excited about. His bat's gaining some power. Frankly, he hit a postseason home run last year. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he did hit a postseason home run. The guy's got a lot of power. He's got a lot of exciting things to come. I really think that. Number three is William Contreras. And without a doubt, Contreras will see time this year at the catching position, whether he be the only one or not. Shea Langoliers is up there. Alex Jackson is, of course, in the conversation. We saw a little bit of Contreras last year during the early part of the year when Tyler Flowers and Travis d'Arnaud both got exposed to COVID. They brought in William Contreras to handle the catching for about a week or so. But spring training will give good insight into what you can expect out of him behind the plate, what you can expect out of him in the box. I really think that William Contreras is the future for the Braves at the catching position, along with Shea Langoliers. I think those two guys are studs, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I think the offense is. I'm not even worried about the offense, frankly. After last year, we're keeping a lot of the same pieces. There's no real reason to worry about the offense. Can they do what they did last year? It's going to be tough. Of course, it's also a different format in the season. You're going from 60 games to 162. There's a lot of changes, and it's going to be interesting to see how that translates. Last year was a sprint. This is a marathon. It's obviously very different, but I'm not worried about the offense. I think there are other facets to worry about, one being the bullpen and just figuring out the competition there. I think we're going to see a lot of different faces in the bullpen. There's nothing wrong with that. Bullpens are kind of meant to be cobbled together. If you got a strong starting pitching, which the Braves do as of right now, I think the bullpen's going to be just fine. Not to mention, you're moving a lot of guys that were starting for the Braves last year, got a lot of great experience. Let's be real here. Bryce Wilson getting postseason experience when he was in the minors earlier in the year is a major deal. I think the other thing that's got to be looked at is the Braves bench, which we're going to talk about a major move they made today in regards to the bench. But as much as there is competition in the bullpen, I think there's real competition in the bench. It's open season, because unless the Braves move to improve the bench even further, there's two guys on it right now in my mind, one being Johan Camargo and two being Jason Kipnis, which if you read the bottom of the screen, Jason Kipnis was signed to a minor league deal to the Braves today. The other guy being Johan Camargo. Johan Camargo is very versatile, and his offensive production firmly puts him on that bench right now in my mind, unless he's a trade piece. But Jason Kipnis, starting second baseman, he's not taking over Ozzie Albies' spot. I highly doubt that. So he's on a minor league deal. He's competing for that bench spot. He put up respectable numbers. I believe in 2019, the last full season he played, he had a 250 average, somewhere around 20 homers, and a 340 on-base percentage. He was doing pretty good. I really think he's going to be a great addition to the Braves bench, a much-needed addition to the Braves bench. Outside of that, assuming you have two more spots or so, there's the following list of players that I think could be competing for those spots. One being Ender Inciarte. He's more than likely going to start the season in center field to get an extra year of control on Christian Pache. The other one being Abraham Almani, Ihara Adrianza, Alex Jackson, Travis Demeritte, just picked up off of waivers out of Detroit, and he's also a former Braves. We talked about him in the last broadcast I brought to you. But I think there's a lot to be excited about. The bench battle is going to be very interesting, and I think you're going to see the most of it during spring training. Obviously, they're going to figure out what they need. And if you don't remember, last year they did a very similar thing. They brought in a couple extra first basemen. Yonder Alonso was on the Braves roster there for a while. He was up and down from the Gwinnett training site, because there were no minor leagues last year, so he was up and down from the Gwinnett training site. And, he's obviously not going to take over Freddie's spot, but there's got to be backups, right? If Freddie was to get hurt, obviously you need a backup. If Ozzie were to get hurt like he did last year, Jason Kipnis would be he would be a good fill-in. Last year, also, you're getting Ozzie Albies back, right, for a full season, which is a major addition. That's almost like a free agency addition. We got him back in the postseason last year. He is just getting into his flow as it ended, but I really think having him for a full season is going to make a world of difference. It's going to add even more depth to this lineup, and I really think that the Braves are set up for success. So, in closing, in terms of this spring training look ahead, last year, amidst the delays, I told you that the Braves were built for a sprint. And based on that Game 7 in the NLCS finale last year, I was right. They were built for a sprint, right? Even without starting pitching, they were. But right now, I think they're built for a marathon, and they're going to be just fine. Everybody's worried about the bullpen. Everybody's worried about the bench pieces, and I get it. There's reason to be concerned. But as I look at it more, as I think about it more, I really think the Braves are going to be in good shape. I think we're getting back to normal, and it'll be a good thing to see. A 162-game season is so much better than a 60-game season, because in a 60-game season, every game matters, which I agree is more entertaining. But in a 162-game season, you're seeing more of what we know as baseball. And I think that's going to be a great thing, and I think the Braves are going to be built for it. I think the biggest competition in the NL East at the moment is the Mets. And I know that's going to put a lot of bad taste in your mouth, but hear me out. The Mets have new ownership who, frankly, doesn't seem to mind spending money. And that's great. I honestly like the moves they've made. Francisco Lindor was the right move for them, I think. But I question if they're built like the Braves are in terms of depth being top to bottom. Depth is something that comes up a lot when we talk about the Braves, and for good reason. The names that I just mentioned a few minutes ago are just scratching the surface of what the Braves have, in their minor leagues. Much less, these guys are just competing to get to the field. Much less what happens once they get there. I mean, this is the same process that got you guys like Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna on, frankly, sweetheart deals. Austin Riley's another one. Dansby Swanson's another one. Freddie Freeman, another one. It's the same exact process. So, a lot of your pitching, Mike Soroka, Max Fried, they're on like $2 million deals at the moment. The Mets aren't built like that. They're spending big money. The only other team I know of that spent money like they're spending at the moment is the Philadelphia Phillies. And when was the last time they won an NL East division? So, I'm just throwing it out there. I really think that's your biggest competition, but I question how much depth they have. And the Braves certainly made some big moves this offseason. I think that gets overshadowed when you sign guys like Francisco Lindor. Marcell Ozuna was a huge deal for the Braves, frankly. The starting pitching fixes were bigger than a lot of people want to give it credit for. Charlie Morton is a very underrated guy, I think, in starting pitching. That was a solid move by Alex Anthopoulos. And I also think Drew Smyly has got potential to be very good this year. And again, not every pitcher is going to be Trevor Bauer. Not every pitcher is going to be a Cy Young winner, right? There's only one every season. But if you can have a functional, well-built five-man rotation, you're going to be successful. And the Braves were so close last year. I mean, they were so close. They got past Cincinnati. They got past the Marlins. And, they lost to the Dodgers in Game 7 after a 3-1 lead. I know. But their pitching was the downfall. And I really think that now that they have a well-built staff, I think they're going to be stronger than they were before and, frankly, have the same offense virtually. So I think that if we added another bench piece, which we did today, actually, that's nice. And it'd be nice to get another reliever, as Alex Anthopoulos has mentioned multiple times. But I don't think it's mandatory either. I know I've talked extensively about Shane Green and how much I'd like to get him back. That's because of how successful he was last year. But I think the Braves are the most well-built team top to bottom in the National League East and potentially on par with the Dodgers. And I know the Dodgers just signed Trevor Bauer, and that's a huge deal. But I think top to bottom, they are on par with the Dodgers. They obviously were last year. And I think they have made a lot of big adjustments, and there will be a lot of exciting moments this year. All the big moments, they all start in spring training, though. So it's going to be fun to watch. Spring training again in 2 days. I hope you're ready. I know that the Braves are ready. And frankly, I can't wait to watch and start reporting to you guys what's going on again, because it's been a long time before I've actually, since I've actually got to talk baseball with you guys about something on the field. These past few months have been all